Welcome back to the forecast brought to you by Headstorm, the show that teaches you how to engineer growth by learning from industry luminaries to provide you with tactical steps you can use tomorrow. Hi, I'm Julian Placino, host of Headstorm Forecast. In today's forecast, cybersecurity expert Alex Cherones is joined by John Hoffman. John is the CEO at Ag Resource Management. He's at the forefront of paradigm-shifting change, pioneering data-driven solutions aimed at some of today's thorniest issues. Today, he's talking about his approach to modernizing lending to farmers. He's also going to give us an inside look at his method for lowering loan risk to farmers while providing them data-driven support they need to increase profitability. John, it's an honor. Let's get started.
Now, you hail from the great state of Michigan. You're a native Michigander, correct?
That I am.
So back in Michigan, ARM has lots of locations as well, right?
They do.
And so from a business model perspective, ARM has not just your corporate headquarters located here nearby in Fort Worth,
Right.
but you've also got, how many different field offices do you have?
So we have 29 locations that served the north, the northeast, the south, and the southeast. And today we have about 1,300 customers.
Huge.
Yeah, and so, we have 4 regional managers that oversee all the locations. One of the beauties, I think, in ARM, certainly that in my due diligence that attracted me is of all of our area managers that run the locations, we've got 18 to 20 years of ag and banking experience.
Wow.
So truly across all fronts and even at the grassroots level, every one of these individuals have more of an interest of saying yes to farmers than actually, collecting a check.
Right.
And that was important to me, because the most important decision for me when I look at a company on that discernment side is the value prop.
Right.
And back to Michigan, I grew up on farms. It was farms and I think basketball that kept me out of trouble, But I just had a love for the whole U.S. farm gate. They were patriotic, they were hard workers, they had family values. And so when I got introduced to ARM, I'm like, this is a fantastic company and their value prop is really solid.
This is the best people to be working for.
Fantastic.
Right? This is what we strive to be from an identity perspective as a country, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely huge.
And it's not too many times you can go through life and make a difference first and make a living. I like making a difference and then making a living because, with your company and the fabulous thing Headstorm has done and our relationship, it's all about serving and doing the right thing on the front end. The money will come on the back end.
That's right. That's right. And it's been, like you said, it's been a rocket ship. So 200 up and then another 130% on top of that, looking at 21. And that's in the height of some of the craziest things. Not only if you can be so bold as saying, try to forget about the implications of the pandemic for a second as it pertains to individual health, put that to the side. We're seeing a massive change in consumption and preferences worldwide right now. We export and have exported massive amounts and very specific ones to different regions of the world, some to Asia, to some to South America. The wheat profile has changed over the years as well, and we're seeing as certain developing countries have a larger spending pool, as the average person has more money to spend, those taste preferences and profiles change, which is having a massive impact stateside on what we're producing now, right?
Absolutely. I mean, and it's only gonna, the demand's only gonna get larger. If you look at the appetite and the Pacific Rim or Asian countries for soy and soybean, it's just, and then the oils, it's absolutely astounding.
Yeah.
But it's going up.
Yeah, no sign of abating. It's the opposite.
Right.
That's huge. That's huge.
Yep.
And so you and the team at ARM have done a fantastic job of making sure that farmers keep farming. It's kind of a mission accomplished moment, crushing it. Everybody's being as productive as possible. Over the course of the last several years, ARM has become more of a technology company and using technology to radicalize and revolutionize the way and the speed at which these loans come out and they're dispersed to the farmer, him or herself, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, when you first look at what we did, we were a company that when we started, were the ones, I like to say, that were running into the burning building while everybody was running out. And what I mean by that is the lending community in general was not going to take the risk of some of our farmers, and so we saw that, and we put together a model that has served the farmer very well. We can look at the crop collateral, we insure it with crop insurance. I mean, the government subsidies, occasionally come into play, but we don't have to lien the farms. We don't have to lien the equipment. We're not interested in the farms or the equipment. We're not interested in taking their property. This is their livelihood. This has been generations and more generations to come, And so, so we're able to deliver as the farmers are. So we were able to just do some things where, in general, others weren't willing to do it.
Right.
So I'm pretty proud of that. And yet today, things have changed drastically. To your point, you've got, we live in changing times, you better change with it.
Right.
I have a saying, innovate or die.
Yep.
And you need to be ready to innovate.
Yep.
And so you look at the technology that's available. Here's, I guess, a way to put it. Today's data can answer tomorrow's questions.
What a fantastic place to be.
What a great place to be. And the better we can serve our customers, primarily from a profitability perspective and sustainability perspective, then it's a win-win for both of us. And that's really where ARM's at. We're moving in a direction that we would like to call a CFO to the farmer, because we spend time with the farmers. We ride in their trucks. We go out for crop inspections. We partner with them with go-to-market strategies. And we feel that we can just improve upon it from an ag tech, fintech perspective.
Right.
And so that's really the direction we're heading. And we're no longer just that company that provides specialty finance. We've got reduced funding opportunities to better compete with the banking community. We've opened up a real estate division. We've got a crop insurance division. And we actually are hoping to expand outside of our current footprint. Because we have about a 45 to 60 mile radius at each location, but we know that we can impact that many more. And, with what I'm most excited about is on the technology side, marrying the information that can be available to the market information and simplifying it for the farmer.
Right.
Much like you see with an Uber app or much like you see with other apps, just a tap. And giving the farmer access to the very status of what's going on with the loan.
Yep.
To giving the farmer access to, aerial coverage or satellite imagery, weather, moisture content, soil content. But then what about being able to tie them into, CBOT, the Chicago Board of Trade, and helping them to understand, different market strategies that might be available, or understanding how to calculate basis at the current day or the basis points that it's at. So it's really exciting. And that's the direction we're excited to head, is kind of be more of that CFO to the farmer.
That's super exciting. And it couldn't happen at a more exciting time either, just generally speaking, because everything I'm reading is saying, hey, the average age of the farmer in the United States is now anywhere from 56 to 63, 65, something like that. Is that right?
Right.
In age. And so if you zoom out even from there, just the larger baby boomer population getting ready to retire or already retiring, and everyone's kind of looking at that. And then as it pertains to ag in specific, what's going to happen with these farms? Well, you've got some of these generational farmers that have these younger generations that maybe or maybe not have decided to go into the family business. And so these, forever it has been, farmers have been early adopters of technology, but now there's a quantum leap as we're seeing coming, as the generations who are responsible for the farming of these fields are now ultra tech savvy. There's a presumption and an unspoken demand that I should have the same thing available to me as I borrow from my ag lender that I have as my local bank.
That's right.
And that's kind of radicalizing. You know, on a lot of the banking applications now, you can have a snapshot of your financial health. You can have your financial score. Here's your FICO score.
Right.
And they'll give you all that information. And much like those kind of traditional consumer-related banks that are focused, that's what where you're moving.
That's
and,
it.
and
Yeah,
it's not just where
absolutely.
you're stopping. You're going to start being prescriptive and being the CFO to them, right?
Yeah. And let's take it just a step further, because to your point, I mean, you know, whether it's the, you know, older age group or the younger guys and gals that are coming in, you know, they are adopters to technology, but let's be honest about it. Their artwork is their planning, their fields, their farms. You know, they're very savvy, you know, on their finances and their operations in general, but where do they want to spend their time? You know, let's get the seed in, let's get the fields tended to, let's make sure we've got the nutrients, let's make sure we got the insecticides, let's make sure that we're, you know, getting the best possible yield, right? So let us tend to that CFO side, you know, and integrate, you know, what's available, not just from a data perspective, but from an information and market perspective as well. And our goal is to simplify it. Today, these folks have coming at them from 20 different directions.
Right.
What if you can just simplify all of that information where it truly serves the interests of our growers, not over a week or 2 week or 3 week period, but right there on the spot, you know? And it's going to go ahead and support truly what our differentiators are, because we speak to speed, solutions, and strategies, you know, where a lot of times it's kind of a slow no.
Right.
In the lending world. We want to get the growers in the field sooner, which means better yield. And we want to make sure they have the information and data to make the kind of decisions that meet their needs today, not next month or 2 months later.
And you talk about meeting the needs of tomorrow with that data focus. And so, you know, ARM is a lending company, yes.
Yes.
It's also a technology company. It's also a fintech company, right?
Right.
Do the right thing on the front end and it comes back to you. That's such a true statement. The lending community at large has backed away from serving farmers, and the ones who didn't made farmers put up their property and equipment as collateral. But ARM's changing that equation by providing farmers with loans and helping them insure their crops as collateral instead, making sure that if something goes wrong, the farmer's loan is covered and they don't lose their livelihood. In the process, they're bringing together information to give farmers a way to quickly access data of what's going on in their field from satellite imagery and weather information. Farmers should be able to focus on their craft with support from others. Now, for our next segment in the forecast, stick around as we dive deep into how using data correctly can help both the environment and the farmers' pockets.
That data that you're leveraging, and you know, ARM has a unique data set itself, based on the fact that you understand not only the industry, that's a given, but you also understand the background and history of farmers. Why? Because these folks come to you on an annual basis, sometimes multiple times in a year, to say, hey, here's what's going on with my farm, here's the history on the farm, and you have a unique window into those fields.
Correct. Well, and it goes back to what I mentioned a minute ago, 18 to 20 years ag and banking experience. So it's just not ag banking.
Right.
You know, a lot of these folks, you know, have grown up on the family farm.
Right.
You know, maybe still tend to the farm or have farms themselves. Mm-hmm. You know, so the intimacy, you know, that they have is, well, they're really just a product of the product.
Right.
You know, and so that's an awfully big win, not just for us, but for our customers and the people we do business with.
It's huge because that makes them not only successful from a financial perspective, which is a huge win, but also from a productivity and, as you said, yield perspective at the farm level. So they're, you know, traditionally, hey, Pa and Grandpa and Mammy told me that this is the right ingredients, the right seed type, the right fertilizer, the right ag inputs, as we call them,
right,
to put on this particular field. Why? Because, well, they did it and their parents before them, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, take that thought there for a second. And what if we could provide regional data analytics to the grower?
Right.
So they're expecting 220 bushels of corn per acre. You know, it's just, or maybe they're expecting 190, but their neighbor's getting 220 or 230. You know, it's like, okay, what are they doing? What kind of information can we, you know, discern there to pass on? What about irrigation issues that come up? In other words, you know, finding where the hot spots are, not by trying to look through the field or send up a drone, but being able to have it readily available and discern right there. Here's where we got to, you know, work on certain parts of the spigots or the irrigation side. We can know right there. What about, you know, the nutrients? We're working with a company right now, and the gentleman's got his PhD. They're really a sharp group, but he did his studies in South America with sugarcane fields. And, you know, I mean, in South America, the farms are not 5,000 acres. They're 20, 50, 100, 150,000 acres. You know, and what they were doing is they'd go take an insecticide out to the entire 100,000 acres. Number one, it's bad for the environment. Number two, it's awfully costly to the farmer.
Right.
Number three, it's not needed.
Right.
Okay. If you can have the data and discern exactly where you need to apply, what does that do for your operation?
Man, it takes your cost basis down massively.
Right. And what if you can help the farmer to see, well, you're thinking corn in this 500 acres here.
Right.
But what about soybean this year? Because here's where the market trends are going.
Right.
Anyhow, you know, all these types of things, again, to just come alongside, you know, the people who feed the world.
It's huge.
Right.
It's huge. So it's not only maximizing yield for the farmer and for us consumers out there eating,
Right.
but it's also understanding the macroeconomic trends and the demand behind specific ag.
Yep.
Right.
Absolutely.
Which is absolutely massive. You talked about sustainability, and you know, not just at the farm level itself, but we talk kind of zoom out. One of the big things that people are talking about nowadays, carbon credits.
Yep.
From a carbon credits perspective, and you know, from a harvesting methodology, it has kind of historically been challenging, right? Because you're ripping a lot of the nutrients out when it comes time to harvest, versus letting the field sit and kind of replenish itself, versus now we're starting to do things like planting winter wheat and things of that nature to help keep that CO2, keep that carbon in the soil and keep it healthy for the next year's crop, right?
Correct.
And so as you see that, is that going to be a massive change in the way that people are doing farming? Is that another potential revenue stream for ARM? How do you see that?
Well, I believe it is, you know, but I still think that, you know, it's an outlier, and we really aren't quite sure what direction Washington might go. And, you know, there's for lack of a better word, some seedy characters out there, you know, that I don't think are providing the best advice, you know, to our farmers. So, you know, we're giving it just a little bit more time to see how it plays out. We are in some pretty healthy conversations. And to your point, yeah, there's crop cover that can, you know, stop the erosion, keep the nutrients in place, you know, for our growers. At the same time, you know, how they monetize it, I think is still maybe, you know, 6 months, a year, 2 years out. So we've definitely got our finger on the pulse and you know, want to be ready to move when it's the right time, not just for us, but when it's really the right time for the ag community.
Sure. So timing is everything, they say, or location is everything. So timing and location is
Let's
everything.
work with both those.
Yeah, let's work
right?
with both of those.
Okay.
So you talked about expanding. So I know, you know, tongue in cheek, we've talked in the past at some of the natural boundaries, which was what the Mississippi being kind of one more or less
Sure.
as you look at the natural boundaries and footprint right now. But you're looking to go west, young man, as they say.
Right. Right.
And you're looking to go expand out there, and a different ag profile, different types of crops out there. But it's effectively the same need, and that's what you guys are looking at as far as that footprint building, right?
Well, to your point, you know, the opportunities I think are endless. We definitely want to stay within our wheelhouse. We won't depart from what we've gotten very good at, and we're primarily in row crops. But you know, we're setting, you know, some funding aside for the dairy community. You know, that's just another big opportunity. Does hemp provide an opportunity? I think so.
Yep.
But there's some boxes to be checked there.
Sure.
We're looking at Montana. We're looking at Idaho. Branching out into some potato deals and things like that. Tree and vine is certainly an opportunity.
Nice.
So we're keeping our options open, but in the meantime, we've got about 2 to 3% of the market that we're working with now, but we feel we've opened that up for 2022 to about 10%. So again, keeping the main thing.
Yep.
And taking advantage of what we're doing in real estate, what we're doing in crop insurance, what we're doing, with building these distributor relations,
right,
and giving better input opportunities to our farmers, because operational costs, even though commodity prices have gone up, operational costs for our growers are huge.
Right.
Fertilizer's gone up, all nutrients have gone up. Insecticides,
yep,
seed, everything.
Everything's up.
And so how do we give them the purchasing power they should have to take advantage of some of the opportunities?
A lot of farmers are generational growers. They learn from their parents and friends how to do what they do. And they've approached their fields with that traditional mindset for generations. But data is starting to change all of that. It's giving farmers a glimpse into how to become more profitable. A lot of which comes from cutting down on waste. Being smarter about waste by using data helps a lot, both for the environment and the farmers' pockets. Next up on the forecast, modernizing loan collateral while using data to protect yield and increase profits.
So zooming out a little bit, talk to me just conceptually, crop insurance, what is it, why is it important, and how does it protect the farmer in his daily activities?
Well, we know that there's 100, maybe 1,000 things that come at our farmers every year. The dynamics of weather, the dynamics of pests, the dynamics of whatever. We saw derecho. I don't even know if I pronounce it right.
Yeah.
Those straight line winds that come through the north. It wasn't a tornado, but it was worse.
Decimated a lot of the corn,
decimated the corn.
Yep.
So what we do is we take a look at the crop collateral, and then we insure it for $1.17 per dollar of projected yield. So that gives the farmer a cushion, and that gives the lender, us, a cushion,
right,
without leaning property and equipment and everything else. It also allows us to work toward the speed, solutions, and strategies that we live by. So provided we have the information, our goal is to say yes or no to that farmer within 72 hours. Not 30 days, not 60 days, but within 72 hours.
3 days.
It's a yes or no. It's not a maybe. It's not, hey, we're going to hold you for a while, then tell you no.
Right.
And it works out fantastic. So if something does go south, whether it's a drought, whether it's a straight line wind like derecho, whether it's too much moisture, then the crop insurance covers,
covers the
crop. Absolutely.
That's huge.
Yeah. So it works really well, and it keeps our risk tolerance at a level that allows us to do what we do, and the farmer's protected.
That's huge. That's
right.
huge. And so you've talked about, there's the weather elements, there's the ag input elements, the fertilizer, the seed, the insecticide, and all that kind of fun stuff behind it. And then you've referenced the equipment, and we've seen a lot of advancements over the years when it comes to an equipment perspective. And back in the early days where farmers first invented irrigation, to where we are now, the farmers is always a technology early adopter over the millennia, and here we are, and it's no different today. We've got heavy and light equipment manufacturers out here who are automating a lot of the tasks that used to be done manually, and we even see that in a high-touch environment. We're seeing a lot of innovation, innovate or die. We're seeing a lot of innovation even on the berries side of the house. And berries historically have been very manual and human-related because of the very specific way and style of harvesting that. But we're seeing all these things change as well. The application of artificial intelligence to say, hey, here's how a machine can go do this effectively around the clock, and making sure that it's done at as high a rate as possible, in protecting the plant itself and the process. But at the end of the day, all this equipment, this new fun equipment, I didn't even talk about drones, right? I mean,
Yeah, right.
it's wild, and satellite imagery like you talked about.
Right.
But all these different players that are now in this ag tech space are kicking off massive amounts of data. And so here, yet again, the farmer is standing there and saying, what do I do?
That's right.
Now that I've done all these things are automated, things are going well. What do I do with all this?
Yep.
And it's kind of like this swivel chair operation that we're seeing, where they have to work on this application, they have to work on that application, they have to work on this different screen, and they keep moving around, and it's difficult for them to reach the point where they can start actioning off that instead of it being siloed, right?
Yeah, I mean, to your point, I mean, look at the advent of just GPS. Look at the size of the planters today. Look at, I mean, the list just goes on. And I think we mentioned it maybe earlier, but information is coming at these folks from 100 different directions.
Right.
That's why what we want to do at ARM is reverse engineer it. You know, because there are a lot of sexy objects,
Sure.
and it does look good. You know, but a year later, are they using it? Probably not. You know, 2 years later, why would I pay for that when
Right.
it's not really, you know, showing me the ROI that I need? You know, or I just don't have time. I don't know what to do with the data. I don't know what to do with the information.
Right.
So we want to reverse engineer it and start with the farmers and say, hey, what's important to you? What's critical to you from an information perspective, from a marketing perspective? And we're going to tie that into our farmer portal with our customers and not only serve them with, you know, the financial tools, the CFO tools, the consulting tools, the boots on the ground tools, but also integrate this data that is thus useful for them because that's what they ask for.
Right.
It doesn't matter what I think. It doesn't matter really what my team thinks. You know, what do our farmers counsel? What do our farmers really feel is important to them?
Yep.
Does that make sense?
That makes a whole lot of sense.
Right.
And you talked about farmer council. So tell me a little bit more. It sounds like you have a group of folks out there that are kind of advising you and your team on what the changing demands are at the field.
Yeah, our president of lending, Mark Branch, is just a tremendous leader. He's one of the founders of the company, and between him and our regional managers and area managers, we've got a great group of very talented growers. So why don't we use that intellectual property? Why don't we use that talent base as to how can we better serve what it is you guys do?
Right.
So that's kind of the idea of the Farmer Council.
It's the tip of the spear.
Yeah, perfect. I love the analogy, tip of the spear.
That's huge.
Yeah.
That's huge. So ARM not only doing the lending side, not only doing the insurance side, doing the real estate side, has become a fintech company and an aggregator to the extent that the data that are now able to be that CFO to the farmer. It's absolutely huge. What else should we be hitting on that we're not talking about yet?
I don't know if I can handle much more. I got to stay focused right there and keep the main thing. So no, you know, there's a lot that we're doing, you know, but mastering, you know, really kind of what we just spoke of is critical, and truly the whole team's excited about it. And, you know, we're working on a couple of human capital pieces, you know, to come in and kind of add to it. So ultimately our main interest is how do we better serve our customers? And there's never a moment we're not thinking about it.
The customer first.
Absolutely.
Yep.
If we take care of our customers, then we've done it right.
Keeping
And you do that by taking care of your employees. So of the team we've got, they're our greatest asset. If we serve them, guess who they'll serve? Our customers.
huge.
Yep.
Huge.
So tremendous, strong culture.
Culture of caring, culture of customer centered, keeping the farmer farming and feeding not only this country, but helping feed the entire world, right?
Yep. ARM, the smart choice.
I love it.
Agricultural loans have used land and equipment as collateral when something goes wrong for years, but there's a better way. One that doesn't affect the farmer's livelihood if something goes wrong. Insuring crops can give farmers a cushion and make sure they don't have to worry about losing land or equipment, though it's always better for the farmer if they can avoid having something go wrong. There has been a lot of advancement in the equipment farmers use, whether that's smarter machinery or IoT devices. All of these are kicking off tons of data that can help farmers run their farms more efficiently, but not a lot of them know what to do with that data, which is why ARM is helping provide them with counsel so they can continue to grow, helping farmers do what they do best while supporting them along the way. The Forecast next segment will give you the inside scoop on satellite imagery. Stick around.
And I'm going to be talking about high-res imagery and a little bit about real-time communications. So I figured a good way to start off this section would be to talk a little bit about software and then a little bit more about hardware, both at a high level, and then we'll do a deeper dive from there. So from the software perspective, there's a lot of approaches in software that already exist and show a lot of success. Many of those approaches include, artificial intelligence or machine learning or vision to identify potential issues or risks or areas for improvement on individual farms or, networks of farms. And there's a few companies that do this that I'll kind of touch on a little bit later that I found kind of recurring through my research. But as cool as these software solutions are, they do require effective hardware to be effective. And so the hardware space does provide a lot of opportunity for improvement. There's a lot of existing solutions out there, but I think, admittedly, I think software is held back a little bit by the current hardware available. I'd say the software is just a little more mature. Obviously, AI and machine learning can be improved. They're always improving. That's kind of inherent to the technology. But as we get better and better hardware and better data, I think those software solutions can improve more quickly. So all that to say, basically, I think a lot of the potential innovation in ag tech right now is centered around hardware, at least from a technical perspective. So kind of going a little bit deeper into high-res specifically or imagery specifically, there's two main methods that I found that I'll talk about, one of those being satellites and the other being drones. Both can be used for a lot of the same purposes, disease, pest, and weed identification, providing general monitoring to crops and farms. There's also obviously tons of differences between those two technologies. The biggest one I'd say is probably cost. As you could probably imagine, a drone is going to cost significantly less, even on the higher end, than a satellite would. You don't have to launch a drone into space, for instance. But another big difference is scale here. Whenever you're thinking, just like an individual farm or maybe just a couple family farms or something like that, I think a lot of times drone technology makes a lot more sense. But when you start to scale up to networks of farms or entire communities, or start to go into the global space, I think it makes a lot more sense to start considering satellite imagery. It provides a lot more opportunities for analytics, and typically the satellites are part of companies that do all this analysis, so it's less on the farmer and more on companies to handle. But overall, I think that they both will allow a lot of the same benefits, which I'll go into. So satellite imagery specifically, like I said, there's several companies that are currently providing, this sort of imagery service. They do a lot of the same things. It's just kind of, I think it's either availability or just kind of preference down to a user, maybe whoever they run into first. One of the major benefits that they all provide is consistent access to aerial views of fields. I think it's a pretty major, a major benefit regardless. Satellites can also track weather or environmental factors and hazards, which can help farmers to be a little more proactive in preparing for either changes in weather or extreme weather events on the horizon. And several of the companies like Gamaya, CropSafe, and Earth Daily Agro that I found do provide warnings and suggestions and alerts based on this sort of information already, which I'll touch on briefly in just a couple slides. And although I'm focusing on imagery primarily here, I do think it's noteworthy to mention that a lot of different things with sensors and other data are incorporated to make the imagery as powerful as it is. Whether that's from weather stations or soil probes or other sorts of sensors like that. But you might be surprised to know how many things that imagery alone can provide for. They can do all sorts of things like providing for estimates on crop biomass, soil hydration, nutrient levels, and like I mentioned before, disease and pest and weed identification. It can help with predicting and tracking weather, crop damage, scheduling assistance on a farm, all those sorts of things you can get almost exclusively from images. And then it just becomes more powerful when you start incorporating other technologies.
Thanks as always for tuning in to the forecast brought to you by Headstorm with your host, myself, Julian Placino, and Alex Cherones. As part of this vast community, we hope these tips and insights will make a difference, future-proof your business, your mindset, and help you surpass your expectations. Feel free to reach out. Our contact info is in the description. Hope to see you next time as the forecast brings you more thoughts from industry leaders and strategies to engineer growth.